All right. Hi there. I'm Jeremy Nichols. I'm the Climate and Energy Program Director for WildEarth Guardians, and I have with me today
Judi Brawer. I am the Wild Places Program Director with WildEarth Guardians.
Thanks for joining us today, Judi. So if you've been tuning into this series of videos, I'm interviewing WildEarth Guardians staff, and I've started off with our program directors, the people who kind of lead our conservation advocacy work. And I've interviewed our wildlife program director, our managing attorney, Wild Rivers program director, and now Judi, the Wild Places program director, is in the hot seat. So thanks so much for joining today, Judi. And you're out of a home office right now where are you located?
I am in Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho, a town I do know well because I grew up there. So a little bit of my heart's still there, but I enjoy not too much. No, I enjoy visiting more than anything. So, and I'm here in my home office in Golden, Colorado. We're all still hunkered down, still trying to weather this health crisis. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, is to take advantage of the need to go virtual, but still engage our members and supporters and share with them the great work that we're doing, the insight and perspectives that we bring to the state of conservation advocacy. So Judi, a question I start off asking usually everybody is, what is your program all about? What is the Wild Places program at WildEarth Guardians? What is it and what does it do?
Sure. So the Wild Places program is a program that's been around for a long time. We focus on public lands protection and species protection on public lands. And we are really focused now on providing a protected and connected system of wildlands and rivers where native species thrive, and also that provide access for people to get out and experience the wild. And we use a variety of strategies, including advocacy. Right now, we're doing a lot of online advocacy, outreach, organizing, as well as education and litigation to protect and restore and connect the West's wild places, wild rivers, and wildlife.
Just that.
Yep, just a little bit.
Well, you know, a lot of people here in the American West totally get what that all means, you know, in terms of like vast expanses of the public lands and trying to link them together. But I know there's a lot of Americans, a lot of people here in the United States who aren't necessarily familiar with that concept, and the fact that we have these millions of acres of national forest lands and lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management that are ours in a sense. Like we can go, we visit them, we have a stake in them, and we have a say in how they're managed. And of course, that often comes up against extractive interests, like mining companies, oil and gas companies, timber companies who want to plunder our public lands, basically. And I know that's a big part. You mentioned litigation. That's a big part of what we do, trying to defend these landscapes from extractive interests who want to despoil them, not conserve them. What are some of the biggest threats that you're seeing right now in terms of public lands? And I know obviously the American West is huge, so you know that can encompass a lot of things. But like, what's really rising to the top for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, in addition to oil and gas, which is what Jeremy works on, we do a lot of work on roads and logging. So right now, there's a really big push to do what's called these large landscape restorations. I put restoration in parentheses because
emphasis on air quotes. Right?
Really, they're logging projects,
right.
And they cut the trees and they build a lot of roads in order to do this. And really, the roads is what impacts the species and the water quality the most. So the Forest Service, just the Forest Service, there's Forest Service land and there's Bureau of Land Management. Just the Forest Service has more miles of road on its land, over 350,000 miles of road on their lands. That's more miles than from here to the moon, just on Forest Service land. And those roads destroy habitat for wildlife, destroy water, destroy fish habitat, clog streams with sediment, and they also provide more access for motorized use to go where they shouldn't be going. And they also are a vector for non-native species such as weeds,
right,
which cause more and more wildfires. So we're really focused on those large landscape so-called restoration projects and getting rid of roads. We are trying to just get rid of all the unneeded roads, right? The Forest Service doesn't need over 350,000 miles of roads. So we're trying to get rid of them and restore the land back to its native habitat.
Right. I mean, the roads are just so, I mean, they're great. They create access, they create opportunities for people to get out into nature, but at the same time, you know, there's too many roads out there right now. And yeah, they erode, they dump sediment in the streams, they open up lands for poaching, for, you know, illicit fires and other illicit public lands uses. And they sever wildlife habitat, right? I mean, that's the big thing is they cut right through, you know, potential migration corridors or just areas where animals need to move, and incredibly disruptive to the natural systems.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of science out there about how roads impact wildlife and how wildlife avoids roads. Even if there's no motorized use at that time on those roads, wildlife will avoid them. And when there is motorized use and that noise, it interrupts elk and deer migration, grizzly bears, just all different species from big to small, and they really impact. And so with these large landscape projects, and again, restoration in parentheses projects, you know, the real thing we're focusing on is true restoration. So take the roads out of the landscape. So you don't need to log, you're not going to be able to log your way back to forest health. It's just not, you know, we've tried that before, it didn't work, especially commercial logging. So
yeah. I know. I would say if cutting down trees was going to save the forest, then they'd be saved. They'd be so healthy right now, right?
Right. And it's been tried before. They've used that excuse before. It hasn't worked before. It's not going to work now. And so really focusing on the true restoration aspect of restoration in terms of decommissioning roads, which means completely getting rid of the roads, reseeding with native seeds, restoring the stream to its natural flow and getting rid of the sediment, and replacing culverts with ones that allow for fish passage and will withstand storm events and things like that. So we're really focused on true restoration, riparian restoration, and restoration. And also we're really looking at a broader scale, so focusing on large landscape protection. So you have these big protected areas like national parks and wilderness areas, but in between those areas, those places aren't protected from mining, logging, oil and gas development, motorized use, and things like that. So we're really working on adding protections and ensuring that those areas are protected, maybe not as wilderness as much as we'd like to see that, but are protected for wildlife migration. So getting rid of the roads, minimizing motorized use, minimizing the amount of extraction that's happening in those areas. So
no, it's really cool. I know people see, like we have like Yellowstone National Park, for example, you know, huge protected landscape, but in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not that big, and animals are still, they need space, they need room to move in and out and to find new habitats and disperse. And so protecting not just Yellowstone, but the edges of it, the whole, what they would call the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is so important. And then when you look, you know, like go further north, like Glacier and the Northern Rockies up there, creating and sustaining corridors between the Northern Rockies and Yellowstone is so important for species like bears, like wolves, just, you know, the overall regional natural system. And, you know, I think use the term, or the Wild Places program uses the term rewilding a lot, right? Like getting those roads out, creating and sustaining those protected areas, maybe not as formal wilderness, but you know, protected to some degree so that animals can freely move. And we can have resilient and vibrant outdoors here in the American West, right?
I mean, just imagine, we have a big project right now, campaign that we're working on in the Gila, which is down in southern New Mexico. So just imagine a connected ecosystems from the Gila all the way up to Glacier and then across to the Pacific Northwest and going through the Cascades to the ocean. Just, you know, with climate change, species, especially migrating and large mammals and carnivores, are really going to need space to move as particularly the Southwest heats up. They're going to be needing those large landscapes to escape the effect of climate change because their habitat is going to diminish, particularly in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, where it really is warming up and it is warming up everywhere, but being able to move and find those protected landscapes is so important.
Yeah, and I know the Gila is really core to your program work, and the Gila, just so folks know, so it's in southern New Mexico, kind of straddles the Arizona-New Mexico border, and at its core is the Alto Leopold Wilderness area, right? And that's
The Gila Wilderness and the Alto, yeah.
okay, yeah, that's right. And those are some of the first wilderness areas protected in the United States, right? Is that?
Yeah.
It's cool, it's incredible, and it's awesome that we have that core there, but now we need to kind of branch out and make sure that we're buffering that core so that, as you mentioned, climate change is hammering the American Southwest.
Yeah.
Animals are going to need more redundancy in their habitats and the availability of habitats so that they can continue to thrive even as the climate crisis rages. So,
yeah.
Exactly. So just taking a step back, I want to know what brought you to WildEarth Guardians, Judi?
Sure. Well, I started doing environmental law in I guess it was 1997 when
That's
I
right.
graduated.
You're an environmental attorney.
I'm an attorney, but I'm not practicing right at the moment. Although I get to do legal strategy, so that's my favorite thing to do instead of actually having to write the briefs and do the arguments. We have attorneys who do that for us.
Yes.
And I worked for an organization called American Wildlands in Bozeman, Montana, which is no longer there. And I heard about this really cool organization called Forest Guardians, which then became WildEarth Guardians. And then I moved to Boise in 2000 and started working with Advocates for the West, which is a great environmental law firm. They do some of our litigation.
Yeah, we work with them a lot, right?
Yeah, we work with them a lot. Great group of people over there. And we started, we worked with WildEarth Guardians, Forest Guardians and WildEarth Guardians then. So I'd always heard of Guardians and I always loved what they did. And I took a step back from law and litigation. And about 2016, when someone got elected, I decided I needed to get back into environmental activism and legal work. And so I heard that Guardians was hiring and I applied for the job because I knew that that would be the organization I wanted to work for. I just loved the programs. I knew some of the people that worked there, and it's just a great organization. And it's a hard-hitting organization. That's what I like.
Yeah, that's been a common theme that everybody's raised. I ask that question of everybody, so I appreciate it. Everybody's is a little different, but there is a common theme in that people really relate to Guardians as a bold advocacy group and a fierce fighter for the wild, whether it's wild rivers, wild places, wildlife, you name it. So it's really cool. It really resonates with a lot of people and with a lot of our members and supporters too. I mean, that's why they support us. They look to us to do great work because we're smart, we're strategic, we're uncompromising, and we aim for big results.
Exactly.
So it's great.
Big landscapes, big results.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so important because I know, in the land protection world, a lot of times, especially in the present day, people settle for really small areas of protection. So, and don't get me wrong, anytime lines are drawn on a map and we say this area is now protected, that is a good thing. But too often, the desire to protect areas and to get lines on a map just dominates, and it comes at the exclusion of considerations like biodiversity, like wildlife, like the need to build redundancy into the public lands landscape in the face of the climate crisis, and all sorts of other values. And I know that's, again, all protected. Protecting any amount of land is important and it matters, but really if we want to achieve the results and the outcomes we need and create resilient, vibrant landscapes with thriving wildlife, then we need to go big. Definitely.
I agree. And there's a lot of information coming out now about the importance of protecting landscapes and biodiversity in preventing pandemics. Not only in places like Asia, Africa, the Middle East, but also in the US. If you look at Lyme disease in particular back east, but there, you just don't know, what, I mean, when you have human wildlife interactions, it's usually not good. It's great to view wildlife and look through your binoculars, but when you start building and developing and logging and mining in the habitat and you're coming into contact and you're shrinking it, making their habitat and their home smaller and smaller and smaller, they have nowhere else to go. We need to provide them a place to go and protect all of that biodiversity. Not, you know, we work in the West, but also around the world. We need to protect that biodiversity and their habitats. They can't live in these small, animals don't recognize lines on a map, right? So you protect 500 acres, yeah, it's probably not enough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and exactly, and that's like kind of the genesis of WildEarth Guardians. I mean, we started out as a group trying to protect national forests only in the American Southwest. We soon realized, you know what, the things that we care about, the natural values, they don't respect these state boundaries. We need to be broader in terms of our scope of work and what we are advocating for. And hence, you know, hence the fact that we now work in basically every Western state, and we have offices in Boise and New Mexico and Colorado and Montana. Yeah. So it really speaks to our recognition that do need to bring a big vision and to be relentless in trying to achieve that vision.
I agree. I agree.
So right now, obviously the pandemic is still on everybody's mind, and and I know it's still out there, it's still happening, and hopefully we're weathering it effectively. Mm-hmm. But I ask everybody, why is your work still important in the face of the pandemic?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, I feel that my work is even more important now, because of what I just said, that it's so important to protect biodiversity. And also, a lot of our work is very relevant to human health and protecting public health and safety. So wildlife corridors, right? Protecting, making overpass. We don't work on overpasses, but we work with groups that create overpasses or underpasses for wildlife. Well, that's a public health and safety issue because so many people have car accidents due to hitting wildlife. But also just the power of nature to the human health and the psyche. The power of being out in nature and being able to go into a forest, into a local park. I went for a hike in the Boise foothills this morning, which is part private and public lands, right? And that, to me, just being able to get outside is so important to my health. Plus, water quality.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of people, their water comes from national forests, but public land. Their water flows through public lands, and they get their water from public lands. And providing clean water is really essential. So getting rid of those roads so the sediment is removed, so you don't have sediment clogging the water, that when it gets into that community, they then have to spend a ton of money and more facilities and more resources to clean up that water before the public get it.
Yeah.
Fish, right? People love to go fishing. They love to go hunting. It's part of the psyche of the West. Tons of people come from all over the world and all over the country to go hunting and fishing in the West. Clean water, native fish habitat, clean air. We are realizing how important clean air is, especially during a pandemic like this, because people who are in more heavily polluted communities are suffering worse under this pandemic. And so wild places, free of the oil and gas development, the logging trucks, the fracking, the mining, those places provide public lands, and they also provide carbon sinks to help mitigate climate change. So there's so many reasons to have open space and public lands and vast areas of wildlands that are protected. It just benefits so many people.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And something that we try to emphasize, but always constantly need to reemphasize, that this isn't just protecting lands for land's sake. This is protecting it for our health and well-being. I mean, there's so many ways that the state of our existence is tied to the outdoors around us. And in the American West, for many of us, the outdoors are those very public lands that we're trying to protect. So absolutely. So what's keeping you inspired and optimistic in this time of crisis?
You know, my work is, I love the work that I'm doing, and I love the people that I work with. So my work is keeping me very inspired and motivated. I happen to be busier than ever right now. There's a lot going on. Unfortunately, the federal agencies, Forest Service, BLM, those folks are not relenting. They are relentless in pushing forward really bad projects, this administration is, I think, using this time to get more logging projects, more roads, more mines just pushed through the system because they think people aren't paying attention and they don't have time, which is true. A lot of people don't have time. They have children, families, they're worried, they're stressed, they're anxious, right? So, but the federal agencies are just boom, 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 relentless getting them out there. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and we're keeping track of what's going on.
Yeah, it's really shameful. And I know we've been trying to pressure the administration to put the brakes on some of its industrial proposals. But yeah, they just, this administration is in business for the extractive industries. And they're doing everything possible to take advantage of this crisis while people are distracted, while people are sick and dying, to hand over public lands, basically, like give them away to be logged, to be mined, to be fracked. It's really shameful. And it's shameful, but I agree with you. It's also keeps you optimistic because we're still in business, thankfully, and we're doing the best we can to, to leverage our fortunate position. Like we can continue to do this work, continue to make a difference, and so we're doing everything possible to make that happen. So
I'm just so, I'm so thankful and grateful for everyone who's been donating to Guardians, and the foundations who are continuing to support us, the donors who are continuing to support us at big levels or small levels. Everything matters. And we've really just, our support system is giving me a lot of motivation because there's just so many people. We get emails all the time like, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for working on this issue. And it's just so motivating to know that people appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And, there's a lot of uncertainty moving forward for a lot of nonprofits, not just WildEarth Guardians, which is a nonprofit advocacy group. But man, yeah, people are really stepping up, and they're giving in big ways. And not just to Guardians, but to other people who need support and other organizations. And it's awesome to see people coming together and realizing, okay, we do need to make some sacrifices here. There may be a lot of uncertainty, but that doesn't mean we just turn our backs on this critical work that needs to get done. So we really do appreciate, all of WildEarth Guardians members and supporters who are sticking with us in this time of crisis, and tuning in to watch like these videos and other virtual outreach that we're putting out there. If you're interested in other virtual outreach that we've been doing, we're posting a lot on our YouTube channel, which is just WildEarth Guardians on YouTube. Also on our Facebook page, which is just WildEarth Guardians. You can check us out there. Lots of good content and material there. Also our website, just stay tuned, plugged in to our website. It's a great way to just keep abreast of the latest work that we're doing, the successes, maybe setbacks, but it's a great source of perspective and inspiration, I think. And if you haven't signed up for our email list, you can do that through our website. Again, it's wildearthguardians.org. So check us out and get signed up. We only send email that's important, so rest assured we're not going to flood your inbox with a bunch of fluff. We will be asking for money at times, but that's what we got to do. I mean, we're in the business to change the world, and we can't do it without customers. So please become a customer and help support our efforts to save the planet. So I want to
plug Idaho Gives. This week is Idaho Gives. Through May 7th, I think. So we're doing a lot of work in Idaho. We have a lot of information on our website about all the work we're doing in Idaho. And so please, since we do have an office in Boise, we're not in our office, but we do have an office in Boise. Come visit us when we're back open for business, but we're still doing a lot of work to protect Idaho. So please support us through Idaho Gives.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Judi. That's great. Good timing there. We take advantage of these funding pushes that every state has. Nonprofits get together and they try to do a big collective push for donations. So the Idaho Gives Day that's coming up is going to be a great opportunity for people to support who, especially if you live in Idaho, your donations are going to have much more of an impact giving during this time. So that's great. And you raise a good point too, Judi. Just please, contact us if you have any questions, concerns, want to chat with us, want to get to know us more. Our contact information is on our website. Once we can get back into the world, definitely visit our offices if you're around. And please do keep in touch. We're here for our members, our supporters, and people who are interested in the work that we're doing. And we want to be responsive. So
absolutely.
Yes. Well, Judi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And hang in there and keep up the optimism and inspiration.
I will. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Take care.
All right, you too.